Hey everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. Hope you're all doing very well today. This video I want to tell you a little bit about Carl Erskine. He had just passed away maybe about a week ago or so. He was 97 years old, and it's a 97 years of full living. And a lot of times we look at our ball players for what they do and their accomplishments on the field. In Carl's case, I think that his accomplishments go well beyond baseball, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about them today. And I have actually two cards of his. The first I want to show you is his 1951 Bowman. It's his rookie. I actually like this card quite a bit. There's a reason why I actually really wanted Carl Erskine's rookie in my collection, and it's not because he was just a Brooklyn Dodger. I think there are maybe two Brooklyn Dodgers left that I'm aware of. Sandy Koufax, I believe he's the last living member of the 1955 team that won the World Series. And then Tommy Buckshot Brown, he was a little bit before that time. So he was like late 1940s, very early 50s. And I think those are the only two guys that are still around. I could be wrong, there could be others, but I'm not entirely sure if that's the case. You guys in the comment section below can tell me if there are any more Brooklyn Dodgers. It's kind of sad, really. Anyway, um, so the other card I have is his 1952 Bowman, and this one actually is autographed. And the one thing I know about Carl Erskine here is that he was very good to his fans. He signed a lot, and his cards are not expensive either. So you can grab a lot of them, and it's not going to bust the bank. So anyway, Carl Erskine, I think he was a really great ball player, a very solid pitcher. He came up on July 25th, 1948, and he ended his career on June 14th, 1959. He had a win-loss record of 122 and 78 and a 4.00 ERA. He only was in one All-Star game, and that was 1954, and he was in the 1955 World Series. He also has two no-hitters to his name as well. And so I found a couple of articles that I want to read to you guys. And there's also something too about Carl Erskine that makes him a really great human being. And it involves his son, Jimmy. And I'm going to share that with you too. So here we go. This is from the New York Times, April 16th, 2024, by Richard Goldstein. Carl Erskine, a star pitcher of the Dodgers' glory years, is dead at 97. The record-setting pitcher known as Osk in Brooklyn was the last surviving member of the Boys of Summer. Carl Erskine, who set a World Series strikeout record, threw two no-hitters and became one of the Brooklyn Dodgers' top pitchers in their glory years of the 1950s, died on Tuesday in Anderson, Indiana, his hometown. He was 97. His death in a hospital was reported on the Dodgers website and confirmed by his family, according to Indy Star, the website of the Indianapolis Star. On a July day in 1948, Erskine arrived at Ebbets Field for the first time. The Brooklyn fans, from reading the papers, were aware that this kid pitcher was coming up from Fort Worth, he once recalled. I got off the subway and I had my duffel bag with me. Fort Worth Cats on the side. Well, I got near the rotunda of Ebbets Field. People spotted me. My first introduction to Ebbets Field was, "Hey, there's Erskine from Fort Worth." It was just a natural turn of the tongue in Brooklyn. Osk, as he came to be known by his Brooklyn fans, was among the most popular Dodgers, and over the years he was often sought out by sports writers for his insightful observations. He teamed with pitchers like Don Newcombe, Preacher Rowe, Clem Labine, Johnny Podres, Billy Lowe's, and Joe Black. and a lineup featuring Jackie Robinson, Roy Campanella, Pee Wee Reese, Duke Snider, Gil Hodges, and Carl Furillo, and Jim Gilliam during the Brooklyn team's heyday in the early to mid 1950s. Erskine was the last survivor of the 13 Dodger players of his time who were profiled by Roger Kahn in his 1972 book, The Boys of Summer, telling of their exploits on the field and the lives they led when their baseball years had ended. Although struggling with a sore pitching shoulder throughout his career, Erskine, an unimposing presence on the mound at 5 foot 10 inches and 165 pounds, employed a superb overhand curveball to help the Dodgers capture 5 pennants, the first in 1949 and the rest in the 1950s, and the 1955 World Series championship, the only one in their history before they moved to Los Angeles in 1958. His 14 strikeouts in Game 3 of the 1953 World Series against the Yankees, a complete Game 3-2 victory, has been eclipsed only by the Los Angeles Dodgers' Sandy Koufax, who had 15 strikeouts against the Yankees in 1963, and the St. Louis Cardinals' Bob Gibson, who struck out 17 Detroit Tigers in 1968. In the 1952 World Series, also against the Yankees, Erskine pitched an 11-inning complete game, retiring the last 19 batters in the Dodgers' 6-5 victory. He pitched no-hitters against the Chicago Cubs in 1952 and the New York Giants in 1956, both at Ebbets Field. His best season was 1953, when he was 20-6 and led the National League in winning percentage at .769. Soon after Erskine retired from the game, his family faced a challenge far afield from the baseball world. Jimmy Erskine, the youngest of 4 children raised by Carl and his wife Betty, was born in 1960 with Down syndrome, and a time when community resources for such children were limited. The Erskines resisted a customary routine of placing Down syndrome children in a group home. Jimmy remained with the family, and Anderson worked at an Applebee's and swam, bowled, and golfed in the Special Olympics, which were founded by Eunice Kennedy Shriver for intellectually challenged young people and adults. Carl and Betty raised funds for the games and often told of Jimmy's accomplishments. Erskine felt that there were parallels between the public's attitude towards people like Jimmy and the pioneering achievements of Jackie Robinson in breaking the modern major league color barrier with the 1947 Dodgers. Jackie made people look beyond race, inside their own souls, inside the depths that made them human, and see the light, Erskine wrote in What I Learned from Jackie Robinson, 2005, with Burton Rocks. In doing so, Jackie likewise changed the way people viewed each other. Carl Daniel Erskine was born in Anderson, some 40 miles northeast of Indianapolis, on December 13, 1926. His father, Matt, who worked for Delco Remy, a General Motors supplier, pitched semi-pro baseball and taught Carl to throw a curveball. Erskine pitched for his high school team and, after serving in the Navy, progressed through the Dodgers minor league system. After pitching briefly in relief as a Dodger rookie, he injured a muscle in his right shoulder in his first major league start, but he was gritty enough to pitch through the pain in his 10 seasons for the Dodgers in Brooklyn and a year and a half in Los Angeles. He was the starting and winning pitcher in the Dodgers' first game at the Los Angeles Coliseum, a 6-5 victory over the San Francisco Giants on April 18, 1958. Erskine pitched his last game in June 1959, then retired at age 32 from the effects of his shoulder injury. He had a career record of 122 victories and 78 losses. A year later, coached the Anderson College, now Anderson University, baseball team in Indiana, became a partner in an insurance firm, and was a senior executive of a local bank. He was also a director of BAT, the Baseball Assistance Team, which was founded in 1986 to provide medical, financial, or psychological assistance to former baseball figures in need. In addition to Jimmy, he and his wife, Betty Palmer Erskine, had two other sons, Gary and Danny, and a daughter, Susan. Jimmy died in November at 63. Complete information about Erskine's survivors was not immediately available. For all of his accomplishments, Erskine liked to tell of a particular errant pitch he once uncorked. It came on the afternoon of October 3rd, 1951, when he was warming up alongside Ralph Branca in the Polo Grounds bullpen in the ninth inning of the decisive Game 3 of the National League Pennant Playoff Series against the New York Giants. When the Dodgers manager, Charlie Dressen, decided to remove Newcomb, his starting pitcher, with the Giants rallying but tallying by 2 runs, he chose Branca over Erskine, who had thrown a warm-up pitch in the dirt. Branca infamously yielded Bobby Thompson's pennant-winning 3-run homer that became the climax of the Giants' memorable pennant run and would be known as baseball's shot heard around the world. Reflecting on having escaped the possibility of becoming Thompson's victim, Erskine would say, "Whenever I'm asked what my best pitch was, I say the curveball I bounced in the Polo Grounds bullpen." Erskine and Branca were among the former Dodgers at the ceremony in February 1960, when a wrecking ball painted to resemble a baseball delivered the first blows in the demolishing of Ebbets Field. I ran my 8mm movie camera looking through the eyepiece as the ball struck the visitors' dugout, the roof of the dugout falling sickly into the dugout pit. And I walked out of the park for the last time, Erskine remembered, in What I Learned from Jackie Robinson. When I boarded my plane back to Indiana, I felt incredibly sick. It was as if I had lost a member of the family. I had heard something about Jimmy Erskine a couple of years ago. In fact, I did read an obituary of his quite recently, in fact, and I was actually very impressed by Jimmy, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more about him. And I also want to tell you a little bit more about Down syndrome, because I got curious and I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. And I think it really kind of opened my eyes to this, and I think you guys are going to find this very, very interesting as I did. So here we go. I had heard something about Jimmy Erskine a couple of years ago. In fact, I did read an obituary of his quite recently, in fact, and I was actually very impressed by Jimmy, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more about him. And I also want to tell you a little bit more about Down syndrome, because I got curious and I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. And I think it really kind of opened my eyes to this, and I think you guys are going to find this very, very interesting as I did. So here we go. I had heard something about Jimmy Erskine a couple of years ago. In fact, I did read an obituary of his quite recently, in fact, and I was actually very impressed by Jimmy, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more about him. And I also want to tell you a little bit more about Down syndrome, because I got curious and I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. And I think it really kind of opened my eyes to this, and I think you guys are going to find this very, very interesting as I did. So here we go. I had heard something about Jimmy Erskine a couple of years ago. In fact, I did read an obituary of his quite recently, in fact, and I was actually very impressed by Jimmy, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more about him. And I also want to tell you a little bit more about Down syndrome, because I got curious and I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. And I think it really kind of opened my eyes to this, and I think you guys are going to find this very, very interesting as I did. So here we go. This is from the Indy Star, November 29th, 2023. Power of Love. Jimmy Erskine dies at 63, outliving Down syndrome prognosis by decades, by Dana Hunsinger Benbow. Jimmy Erskine, son of Dodgers baseball great Carl Erskine, who outlived his Down syndrome prognosis by decades and, along the way, became the face of Special Olympics, died Saturday. He was 63 years old. Erskine's death brought sadness and sorrow to family and friends, but there was also joy in the victory of his long life, and a life that was a true testament to the power of love, said family friend Ted Green. When Erskine was born on April 1st, 1960, the youngest child of Carl Erskine and his wife Betty, doctors told his parents they should send Jimmy to a mental institution. At the time, average life expectancy for babies born with Down syndrome was 10 years old. Instead, the Erskines told doctors Jimmy was going home with them because no one could care or love their son the way they could. It was an incredible decision, said Green, an Indianapolis filmmaker who became close to the Erskine family as he made the documentary The Best We've Got, the Carl Erskine story. In the 1960s, children with intellectual disabilities weren't usually taken out in public. They typically didn't receive an education, and if they were at home instead of an institution, they were kept hidden away. The Erskines took Jimmy to the grocery store, to church, and to restaurants. They took him everywhere they went. They let him fly, said Green, and fly he did. For more than 50 years, Erskine competed in Special Olympics. At the age of 40, he got his first job at Applebee's, working there for 20 years. Every day that he went to work, it was just like the first day, said Betty Erskine in the Best We've Got documentary. He was thrilled to go. And eventually, Erskine lived on his own, something doctors told the family he would never be able to do. Jimmy Erskine is a beacon of hope not only to people who are born with intellectual disabilities, not only to their families, Green said, but really to all of us. When Jimmy Erskine was born in 1960, Carl Erskine had just finished a stellar 11-year career with the Brooklyn and Los Angeles Dodgers as a pitcher. He pitched the first nationally televised no-hitter, played in 5 World Series, winning in 1955, set the series single-game strikeout record, threw 2 no-hitters, and pitched the Dodgers' first game in Los Angeles. But in 1959, Carl Erskine pitched his last game and came home to Anderson. The next year, Jimmy was born, and Carl and Betty raised Jimmy just as they did their other 3 children, Danny, Gary, and Susan. Green says the Erskines blazed a trail for the other families with children who had special needs. They showed quietly through their actions how to raise a child with intellectual disabilities. But Carl Erskine didn't just make life better for Jimmy. He took to another fight, a fight to make lives better for all people with special needs. He was a fierce advocate for educational opportunities and for Special Olympics. Carl Erskine used his professional baseball platform to speak out about the importance of Special Olympics, and he became friends with Eunice Kennedy Shriver, the founder of the organization. Shriver once said that Jimmy Erskine epitomized what Special Olympics was all about. It happened after a track and field event, a race where Jimmy crossed the finish line, losing by a landslide, with his arms spread out and a huge smile on his face. Win or lose, that was what the Special Olympics stood for, as its longtime motto states. Let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. That photo of Jimmy became an iconic representation of what the Special Olympics was all about, Green said. In 50 years of competing, Jimmy Erskine won plenty of gold medals, and those medals became a symbol of what a true sports hero was. Whenever Carl Erskine was asked to give a speech as a World Series champ, he would stand at the podium and hold up his World Series ring and tell the audience how much it meant to him. But then he would always pull from his pocket one of Jimmy's gold medals from the Special Olympics. You tell me which is the greater achievement, Carl Erskine would say to the audience. Which of these means more? The crowd would go silent, Green said. Then they would clap, and then the tears would fall. Jimmy Erskine lived a life that doctors never expected him to live. He made a difference. He made an impact, and not much because he was the son of a Major League Baseball great. He did it all on his own, said Betty Erskine in the Best We've Got documentary. He was a great man. I mean, I'm serious in saying we all could learn a lot with all the problems in this world today if we would all meet Jimmy and live with him for just a little while. In the last couple of years, Jimmy had slowed down, said Green, but still he would help his parents. Just as any child in their 60s with parents in their 90s, he would help Carl put on his socks and help Betty in the kitchen. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed, said Green. When Jimmy Erskine was born in 1960, the average life expectancy of a baby with Down syndrome was 10 years old. By 1983, when Jimmy was 23, it had climbed to 25 years old. In 2007, when Jimmy was 47, the CDC said the average life expectancy for a person with Down syndrome was 47 years old. But many factors can affect how long a person with Down syndrome lives, the CDC wrote. Many factors, including love, incredible love. Jimmy more than doubled his life expectancy and was a joyous man, said Green, that can be attributed to the love he received from his father, Carl, and mother, Betty, and his entire family. He's a testament to the power of love. This is from the National Association for Down Syndrome. What is Down syndrome? Down syndrome is a genetic condition that causes delays in physical and intellectual development. It occurs in 1 in every 792 live births. Individuals with Down syndrome have 47 chromosomes instead of the usual 46. It is the most frequently occurring chromosomal disorder. Down syndrome is not related to race, nationality, religion, or socioeconomic status. The most important fact to know about individuals with Down syndrome is that they are more like others than they are different. Diagnosis: Down syndrome is usually identified at birth or shortly thereafter. Initially, the diagnosis is based on physical characteristics that are commonly seen in babies with Down syndrome. These include low muscle tone, a single crease across the palm of the hand, a slightly flattened facial profile, and an upward slant to the eyes. The diagnosis must be confirmed by a chromosome study. A karyotype provides a visual display of the chromosomes grouped by their size, number, and shape. Chromosomes may be studied by examining blood or tissue cells. Cause: Down syndrome is usually caused by an error in cell division called neurodisjunction. It is not known why this occurs. However, it is known that the error occurs at conception and is not related to anything the mother did during pregnancy. It has been known for some time that the incidence of Down syndrome increases with advancing maternal age. However, 80% of children with Down syndrome are born to women under 35 years of age. Types of Down syndrome. There are three chromosomal patterns that result in Down syndrome. 1. Trisomy 21 is caused by a faulty cell division that results in the baby having three number 21 chromosomes instead of two. Prior to or at conception, a pair of number 21 chromosomes in either the egg or the sperm fails to separate properly. The extra chromosome is replicated in every cell of the body. 95% of all people with Down syndrome have trisomy 21. 2. Translocation accounts for only 3% to 4% of all cases. In translocation, a part of chromosome number 21 breaks off during cell division and attaches to another chromosome. The presence of an extra piece of the 21st chromosome causes the characteristics of Down syndrome, unlike trisomy 21, which is the result of a random error in the early cell division. Translocation may indicate that one of the parents is carrying chromosomal material that is arranged in an unusual manner. Genetic counseling can be sought to ascertain more information when these circumstances occur. Number 3, mosaicism occurs when non-disjunction of chromosome number 21 takes place in one of the initial cell divisions after fertilization. When this happens, there is a mixture of two types of cells, some containing 46 chromosomes and some 47. The cells with 47 chromosomes contain an extra 21st chromosome. Because of the mosaic pattern of these cells, the term mosaicism is used. The type of Down syndrome occurs in only 1 or 2% of all cases of Down syndrome. Regardless of the type of Down syndrome, a person may have a critical portion of the 21st chromosome is present in some or all of their cells. This additional genetic material alters the course of development and causes the characteristics associated with the syndrome. Learning and development. It is important to remember that while children and adults with Down syndrome experience developmental delays, they also may have talents and gifts and should be given the opportunity and encouragement to develop them. Most children with Down syndrome have mild to moderate impairments, but it is important to note that they are more like other children than they are different. Early intervention services should be provided shortly after birth. These services should include physical, speech, and developmental therapies. Most children attend their neighborhood schools, some in regular classes and others in special education classes. Some children have more significant needs and require a more specialized program. Some high school graduates with Down syndrome participate in post-secondary education. Many adults with Down syndrome are capable of working in a community, but some require a more structured environment. Health issues. Many children with Down syndrome have health complications beyond the usual childhood illnesses. Approximately 40% of the children have congenital heart defects. It is very important that an endocardiogram be performed on all newborns with Down syndrome in order to identify any serious cardiac problems that might be present. Some of the heart conditions require surgery, while others only require careful monitoring. Children with Down syndrome have a higher incidence of infection, respiratory, vision, and hearing problems, as well as thyroid and other medical conditions. However, with appropriate medical care, most children and adults with Down syndrome can lead healthy lives. The average life expectancy of individuals with Down syndrome is 60 years, with many living into their 60s and 70s. And I've also heard they also have a higher rate of Alzheimer's as well. Prenatal diagnosis. Two types of procedures are available to pregnant women: screening tests and diagnostic tests. The screening tests eliminate the risk of the baby having Down syndrome. Diagnostic tests tell whether or not the baby actually has Down syndrome. Screening tests. Maternal serum tests, such as the triple screen or a quad screen, measure quantities of various substances in the blood. These tests are usually done between 15 and 20 weeks gestation. Newer non-invasive tests have been developed which look for genetic material from the baby in the mother's blood. They can be done either in the pregnancy and are more accurate than other screening tests, but they are currently recommended for only high-risk pregnancies. Sonograms, ultrasounds, are usually performed in conjunction with other screenings. These can show some physical traits that are helpful in calculating the risk of Down syndrome. Screening tests do not accurately confirm the diagnosis of Down syndrome. In fact, false positives and false negatives frequently occur. Diagnostic tests. Three diagnostic tests are currently available. Chronic villus sampling is conducted between 10 and 12 weeks. In this test, a small piece of the placenta will be taken and analyzed. Amniocentesis is performed between 14 and 20 weeks. A small sample of amniotic fluid is drawn and cells in the fluid are tested. Percutaneous umbilical blood sampling is performed after 18 weeks. This test examines blood from the umbilical cord. I think there's something very special about both men, Jimmy Erskine, obviously, and Carl Erskine. And it is Carl Erskine and his wife Betty who really stand out to me, and because they said that they wanted to take home their son and teach him. And I think Jimmy has a lot to teach us, to tell you the truth, and maybe Carl Erskine and his wife as well. And Carl Erskine, again, is 97 years old. That is a good life as far as I'm concerned. And when it comes to people with disabilities, I have a disability. I have cerebral palsy. I don't think it really affects the way I speak in person as it does here on this platform. I don't know why. I'm always like, and I don't like the platform. I really don't. I don't like this medium at all. And I don't know if that can be helped, to tell you the truth. But with this, I thought that you guys would really enjoy this and find it very educational as I did. And that's one of the great things I like about the hobby, not just collecting sports cards here, is that everybody has a story to tell. And sometimes those stories are outside of sports, as Carl Erskine's is. And again, Carl Erskine, uh, his cards are not very expensive. I really wanted to have a card or two of his in my collection because of his story, and I wanted to share that with you guys today because it's more than sports, and people with intellectual disabilities or physical disabilities, uh, they I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for myself, but there is absolutely a need for these people in society. I think that they can tell everybody else basically like what it's like, maybe if you're not disabled, what it's like for these people. For me personally, having cerebral palsy, I kind of got off lucky, to tell you the truth. I have a very mild form of it. Sometimes I forget, and it reminds me. And my cerebral palsy, it really keeps me humble. It really does. We all age differently, and for me personally, like my knees are now like gone. It's very hard for me to walk. Again, I was a athlete in high school and afterwards, and now I can barely walk. But uh, I'm also able to do this. I can again walk, talk. I can hold down a job. I can do everything that everybody else can do for the most part. Um, but when it comes to my cerebral palsy, I have to take things a little bit slow, and I have to exercise a little bit more than I would before, so I can walk. And so, again, for me, I'm actually very glad that I am disabled because I have a better perspective, a different perspective on life, and really what makes me human. Sometimes we kind of forget this too, that your life can change in a New York second. You might not be disabled one moment and be disabled permanently the next. You never know what happens when you walk out that door in the morning or whatever. Your life can take a huge change in a blink of an eye. I had a friend of mine who fought in World War II. He was a Navy veteran, and he joined up really young, underage, and he fought overseas. And so I would have a cup of coffee with this guy uh, almost every weekend, and I knew him when he was in his 80s and his 90s as well. And we'd have a coffee and discuss everything under the sun. And he actually he used to watch some of the ball players that I collect, some of the guys who played in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s and 60s. So one day I was talking to him about my disability, and he said, "If your parents knew that you were going to be disabled, would they have you?" As you know, I said, "Well, my parents really wanted to have kids." He said, "Well, your parents were selfish." Well, a normal person probably would have ducked them, maybe, or just scolded them. And I just said, you know what? When you have children, these are the things that it's really out of your hands for the most part. You never know what's going to happen. Even if your child ends up, with two arms, two legs, fully functioning, that doesn't mean that they will be fully functioning or could be fully functioning as adults. You never know what's going to happen, and it's all really kind of the luck of the draw, I think. And some of it's genetic, some of it is other things. You could be fully fine as a baby and turn out to be an alcoholic or a drug addict, or go off to war and lose a limb, or PTSD, or anything. So it's really the luck of the draw, I think. In my case, I feel very lucky. I feel very fortunate that I am disabled, uh, because I have a different perspective on life, and I think differently. If I didn't have this disability, would I think, feel, act, believe, and behave differently than I do now? Would I like the person that I would normally have been had I not been disabled? Or do I, I like myself now? So um, I I said all this to him, and he really kind of understood, and he apologized, and it was okay. And quite frankly, in all my years on this earth, I've been called all sorts of names. There's a lot of people that you're going to come across who, quite frankly, are ignorant, and they maybe they just don't know. And so sometimes it's just better to say, "Hey, listen, like this is what's up," and but other people, like, they don't really care, and that's fine too. So I think in Jimmy's case, his disability was a strength. Maybe in mine, I have no idea. That's not for me to say. That's for other people to say. People who know me, people who run into me, and maybe people who are seeing this now. And it's not for me to say. I feel that I am better off as a human being being disabled than not, but I have to live in my body too. So sometimes my disability, it challenges me greatly, but at the end of the day, I'm like, I am glad that A, I'm alive, B, that I can work, talk, walk, and participate in society and in the hobby. And maybe I have a few things to teach other people. My education here is free, and I am being educated as well through this hobby. So, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it as always. Let me know what you think of Carl Erskine and Jimmy Erskine and anything I've discussed here. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Anyway, I'll talk to you in another video. Have a good day. Bye.